Now we're learning more tonight about the Rutland police chief's retirement. The decision, announced this past weekend, comes just weeks after the chief faced criticism for withholding an internal investigation into the death of a young officer. Rutland Bureau Chief Connor Ullathorne has new details for us tonight.
We now know more about the transition plan for Chief Brian Kilcullen. After a decade leading the Rutland City Police Force, he is set to retire on March 1st of 2026. He'll remain with the department until then in a limited role. Chief Brian Kilcullen's resignation follows a report that pointed fingers at police for this crash that killed trainee Jessica Ebenhausen. She was allegedly hit and killed by a fleeing suspect in 2023. The report pointed out missteps by her supervisors that say it directly contributed to her death. And the report was withheld from the public for months, only coming to light when a defense attorney subpoenaed it. Chief Kilcullen tendered his resignation to the police commission during a special meeting last week. He will stay on in a limited role until he steps down in March. The commission refused to speak on camera about Kilcullen's departure, but did tell Channel 3 News his salary of $165,000 a year will remain the same in his last months on the job.
It was a little bit more sudden than what had been pre-planned.
Mayor Mike Dungas cannot hire or fire a police chief. That's up to the police commission. But Dungas said he was involved in the executive sessions before and after learning of the chief's decision to retire. The mayor says the most important part of those meetings was to establish a transition plan.
We'll be able to keep the ball rolling. Yes, it'll add stress. Anytime there's a leader that leaves a position, especially with short notice, I think there's a little bit of challenge there. But I do see a bright future for the department under new leadership, and we've got a process.
The police commission named Commander Matthew Prouty as the interim chief, effective immediately. Tuesday was his first day in charge of the department. He tells us he has not decided whether to seek the job on a permanent basis. The police commission meets January 5th to determine the next steps of the process to recruit or select a full-time police chief. We reached out to Kilcullen for comments on his abrupt decision to retire. He also faces criticism from state's attorney Ian Sullivan, who accused the chief of suppressing that report into the young officer's death. Our efforts to reach the chief have gone unanswered. We're now reporting in our Rutland Bureau. Connor Ullathorne, Channel 3 News.